the podcast with Dan Gardell and Greg Evans.
For the podcast in association with NordVPN, you can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to www.1874.io/NordVPN. If you do that, you'll get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and we thank them very much for sponsoring the show. Global Greg Evans. Here we are on the eve of well, it's not quite the eve. We're near the Premier League season kicking off. Probably the most exciting season for Villa in many, many years. I don't think we felt this kind of sense of optimism for a long, long time going into a Premier League season. We've had the Europa Conference League draw as well for the qualifiers. What did you make of them?
Yeah, hi Dan, you're right.
Hello. Sorry, I should ask you if you're okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, all good, thanks. I'm all good. It's incredibly exciting, isn't it? Villa are looking really, really good. We always try not to get too carried away, but it's difficult, isn't it? When Villa are looking so good and so in such good shape. Everything gearing up to Saturday. Looking forward to that late kickoff. I think it'd be a great atmosphere at St James's Park. Really looking forward to the Premier League season in general as well. I do think this season we're going to see probably the biggest gap between maybe the top 7 or 8 teams and then the rest of the division. I think the real top teams in the division have moved further away from the lower ranked teams, and you can go through some of those. Your Evertons and your Wolves and your Palaces and your Fulhams, and they just don't seem like they've made much progress. And in fact, maybe some of them might have even gone backwards this year. So I think there's going to be a big gap, and that's great for Villa because they seem very set up to take advantage of that. Yeah, the Europa Conference League draw also is very exciting. It was great that Villa became seeded, wasn't it? Because it just made that passage just ever so slightly easier. I do fancy Villa to perform well against sort of any team in that competition this season. The fact that they've got either Hibernian or Luzern in Switzerland are a couple of decent options, really, because Edinburgh's a great city and something a city that Villa fans I'm sure will go there and really enjoy. John McGinn would be well up for that one as well. I think playing against his old
Could be
club.
Massive for the McGinn family, couldn't it? Yeah,
it'll be huge. Yeah, I mean, it's just he probably never thought he would line up against Hibs again. Certainly not for Villa. So to get that sort of quirk of a fixture is potentially could be great. Luzern, obviously, finished 4th in the Swiss league. I expect, like myself, not many Villa fans know too much about them. But I
expected you to be clued up. To be honest, I'm a bit disappointed in you.
I mean, it looks like a lovely little city on the river and surrounded by mountains. I'm sure Villa fans will find a square where they can put some flags up and drink Heineken. But it looks like a very beautiful city, and I think this is what's going to be nice for supporters now. They're going to travel Europe and get to see some different places that they perhaps wouldn't have gone to in normal times. I've never spent any time in Switzerland, so if I'm over there, that'd be a fun one. But yeah, equally, I presume Hibs will get the job done. They're probably the slightly strongest team, albeit a team finishing 5th in the Scottish Premiership last season. But look, the main thing for Villa is get the job done. Away first, isn't it? Then home.
Yes, away first.
Away first, then home. So, it'd be nice to just to get that clarity, and then the club can move forward again.
It was nice to have that draw on the eve of the Premier League season. I think, like you said, it's a really exciting first game away at Newcastle. It'll be a nice barometer, actually, of where both clubs are at. Villa, of course, played Newcastle off the park at Villa Park quite late on in last season. But I think, yeah, it's a tough place to go. Not the ideal start, but in a lot of ways, I think it's good to play them on the first day and see where we're at. I take what you've just said about the top 8. I think the top 8's pretty defined. I've got to say, I think the top 3 will probably be quite defined in the Premier League this season. But after that, I think anyone could finish anywhere of those top 8 teams that we've just spoken about. I think Man City, Arsenal and Manchester United are clear. But then after that, yeah, I don't see much between the rest of the teams. And I'm obviously at Sky at the moment. I've spoken to a couple of people today who are neutral reporters for other teams, and they're all saying to me, they seriously think Villa can finish top 5 and qualify for the Champions League this season. I think I would agree with that. I think by the way they were under Unai Emery, the summer business they've done, how they've looked in pre-season, depends a lot on the Europa Conference League, how deep they go in that competition. But if top 5 does get you Champions League, depending on what happens with the coefficients, there's no reason why Aston Villa cannot finish 5th, Greg.
Yeah, no, I agree. They've got to. The key for them, of course, is to balance European games and a Premier League campaign. You know that
They
is
should be
not.
able to do that, shouldn't they, Villa? Because of the quality of opposition in the Conference League. It'd be harder for
Yeah,
Newcastle
I
in the
think
Champions
so.
League, for example, to
Yeah, they're
find a
gonna.
balance.
Yeah, that's it. You know, the games are going to be even harder. And for, I mean, and for Arsenal as well. You know, Arsenal have recruited extremely well, but they are stepping up a level as well. Remember, and having the the added addition of Champions League football. What I would say is I firmly believe Liverpool and Chelsea are going to be so much stronger than last season. Definitely Liverpool because you know they haven't got Champions League football. They've recruited relatively well. A couple of gaps in midfield still, but they've recruited well with McAllister and Szoboszlai, and I just think they won't care about the Europa League. So their focus is going to be on getting back into the top 4. I put them on a similar level to Man United. I don't agree with you that the top 3.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
So I think Liverpool and Chelsea have got work to do. I think they're more in transition than Villa are, and
I
Villa finished
think.
ahead of Chelsea last season.
I think. Look, Chelsea are in transition, 100%. We spoke about it last week, didn't we, on the podcast? But again, you know, the fact that they won't have European football will benefit them slightly in the Premier League because they'll be a lot fresher. Come later on in the season, you know, when perhaps Pochettino, an excellent manager, has had a little bit of time to get some of his players together, get a bit of a formula going. I'm convinced Chelsea will be much better. Not great news for them this morning with Nkunku getting
No,
injured
that's really
and
not.
been out for a long time. So that'll be a blow for them. Clearly, still have some issues. You know, around the sort of attacking midfield positions, but I think they'll be better. But yeah, I take your point. I do think Villa will be serious challenges this year. I think that everything's set up for Villa almost, isn't it? If you look through the departments now, very strong defensively, lots of options, very strong in midfield, lots of options. Attacking department in general is pretty strong. I just fear slightly about the strikers if something happens to Ollie Watkins. But, you know, we've seen over the season that he's a very durable player, scored lots of goals, and they can certainly rely on him. And look, if they don't get anybody in this window, there's always January to react. So, but yeah, it's looking good, isn't it? And I do think if Villa can get off to a good start, then they will strike fear into plenty of other teams in the division.
You're talking of like the shape of the squad at the moment. Do you think what we've got now will be pretty much what we've got by the end of August?
Yeah, there's one position perhaps that they're still looking at, and that's the striker. Whether they bring a striker in, and you know perhaps move some of the parts around still, or promote you know a new player slightly higher up the ranks. It remains to be seen. But I do think Villa's the bulk of Villa's business is done now. You know, they have got the players in they wanted to get in. It's a very strong group now. They've decided that Jadon Philogene is sticking around and won't be going out on loan. So he's another, you know, attacking player that's going to be in the squad now and featuring heavily. And yeah, if there's just there's one dilemma almost at striker to play along, to offer more competition to Ollie Watkins. But yeah, as we've been saying for a couple of weeks now, the key for Villa is moving players on. We know that Aaron Ramsey is expected to leave for Burnley. Don't think it's a shame. It's sad in some ways because you know you're breaking up the Ramsey trio of Jacob, Aaron, and Cole. And for those who don't know, Cole is a 16-year-old now who think he's coming through the ranks as well. No easy task for him trying to get through when he's got two brothers at elite level already. So, but yeah, I don't think Villa. As harsh as this sounds, I don't think Villa are missing anything by selling Aaron Ramsey now. And Burnley are willing to pay the £12 million. The only hold up at the moment is the a few minor personal details around the buyback clause. If Villa can get that sorted, they'll let him go, and they've obviously got that option to call him back at some point if they feel that's needed. The key now is to get a bit of money back in. Villa have spent nearly €90 million on two players in Diaby and Torres. It's a hell of a lot of money. That there are youth team players or academy graduates that are growing in value, and that's been the long-term sort of self-sustainable plan that has been put in place by the owners now for a couple of years, and starting to see we're starting to see players come through now and increase in value. You've got the likes of Tim Eric-Boonham, who is currently injured and is going to be missing for a little while. Obviously, Aaron Ramsey, who's moved to Burnley. Cameron Archer, you'd expect him to stay, but if a very big bid came in for him, Villa would have to look at that. And there are others, in and around the edges. Lamar Bogard, we expect him to go out on loan again. Finn Azaz has signed a new deal and gone out on loan. Louis Barry. There are lots of players here now that are sort of growing in value and will make Villa some money in the future. And you've got a couple of the first teamers, Leander Dendoncker, perhaps Leon Bailey. I mean, it feels like we'd just be left a little light if he did go. And
I wouldn't let him go. I don't think.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it'd be the smartest move to let him go. But again, if you get a very, very big offer, perhaps from somewhere like Saudi Arabia, it might be too good to turn down. And certainly Philippe Coutinho, they'll be looking to move him on now and get the money back in for him.
Yeah, we'll come on to Coutinho. We'll touch on the Valencia game in a second. Just wanted to ask you a bit more about the Aaron Ramsey deal. To me, that feels a good deal for Villa because 12 million straight away, pure profit put towards your FFP and your accounts, which is brilliant. You've got the option to bring him back. He's actually going to a club that's in a fairly progressive position at the moment in Burnley. I don't really think Burnley will be in massive trouble this season. They've got a good manager in Vincent Kompany. They've done some decent business so far. They're carrying that momentum from a really good championship season. So I actually think that's a really intriguing move for him. He's done it at a kind of the top level of the championship now with Middlesbrough and Norwich, Ramsey, and done well. So to go to a lower end Premier League team and play maybe a season or 2 seasons there and see how he goes, see if he grows enough for Villa to bring him back, I think that's a really good deal for the club because as much as I like him, I don't think he's going to get much football this season.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great move for him, and I think fair play to him. It just shows that his progression. He's now seen as a worthy Premier League player that can come in and perform. It reminds me a little bit like the Gibbs White deal from Wolves to Nottingham Forest.
A hell of a lot cheaper.
Yeah, just a lot cheaper. But similar type of player from a similar upbringing, come through the England ranks, done well. He was obviously part of the under-19 team that won the Euros last summer alongside Chukwuemeka and Eric Boonham. So great news for Villa that they're producing these kids now and are able to sell them on for a significant amount of money because that's what Man City and that's what Chelsea and Liverpool to an extent in previous years, with the likes of Harry Wilson and the Nottingham Forest striker and a few others. But look, that's what the big clubs do. They are able to produce players and sell them on for big money, and then that helps fund their transfer plans in the future. And look, it's absolutely no slight on Aaron Ramsey at all. He's going to a very decent, forward-thinking Premier League club, and playing under Vincent Kompany, I think is going to be quite fun for him. He's going to fit into the sort of attacking midfield role. We know that he played more of a defensive type midfielder when he was a little bit younger, but he's certainly an attacking midfielder. So expect that deal to get done. That there might still be a mishap somewhere along the line, so we won't say it will get done for certain, but it's very, very close now. It's Villa have still got the option of bringing him back if they feel that he's worthy of a place in the future. But then
that's what progressive teams do, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're not losing anything. Look, Aaron Ramsey's never played a minute in the Premier League, as far as I'm aware. So they're not losing anything. Yeah, in an ideal world, you look at it and you think, well, it's a talented attacking midfielder that's come through the ranks. It'd be great to sort of use him sparingly in the Europa League this year. But Villa have got some really senior players ahead of him now, and it's going to be tough for players like that to break in.
He'll get more out of a Premier League season at Burnley, or 2 Premier League seasons out of Burnley, than he will a few cameos against teams in the Europa Conference League, for absolute sure. And you're right, because it's what progressive clubs do. Man City, I can't believe Man City aren't in for Lavia at the moment. I think they're light, Man City, in terms of depth and squad depth at the moment. They've, I presume, have got a buyback on Lavia. I can't believe that they're not in for him at the moment. They did it with us, with Douglas Luiz. I know they never pulled him back in the end, but probably if he was at the level he is now a couple of years ago, they probably would have pulled him back, wouldn't they? And again, it's what smart teams do. Chelsea have sold so many players from their academy and put buyback clauses in. I know they haven't often actioned them, but that they've done it, and it gives you the option if you do think they're right and they do fit back at the club. So Villa lose nothing by doing it. I think it's probably a deal that's good for every party. It's good for Aaron Ramsey, it's good for Villa, and it's good for Burnley. So it ticks all the boxes. So it's not a major concern to me. Like you say, it would have been nice for him to stick around and maybe play some Europa Conference games. But I like to see the club do this. I like to see the club be progressive, and I really feel Villa are that now in like all areas of the club, modern, progressive, doing all the right things. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes at Villa at the moment, Greg. So I'm going to allow you to do that, because I felt like that was a nice segue.
Yeah, it's just quite interesting, with obviously Monchi on board now as a very experienced sporting director, alongside Emery and Damir Vadigani, who he both knows well. And it's a very Spanish setup at Villa now. There are so many Spaniards in the door. I mean, even Austin McPhee's who's the set piece coach, even his assistant Spanish, but he's been along.
Really?
Yeah, he's been at the club for actually, dates back pre-Emery. So that there's a very Spanish feel around the place, especially with some of the South Americans. Obviously the Spanish speakers there. But what's really key, I think, with Monchi is that he's starting to settle in now. He's getting used to his new surroundings, and it's actually a very big move for him, because Sevilla is almost was his life. He sort of grew up there, and he built everything from scratch almost at Sevilla, right back in 2000, 2001, I think it was. Didn't have a very successful time at Roma, but he's come to Villa and he's very prepared to work with what's already in place. And I think what's quite special about Villa is the data team and the scouting department that they've got already there, and obviously Rob McKenzie, who's head of recruitment. It would have been very easy for the Spanish to come in and rip everything up and look at it and think, well, this is our baby now. We're going to decide on everything. But the Diaby move, for example, we know that Emery wanted Nico Williams, but he was prepared to go to the data team and the scouts after and say, look, what are the best alternatives? And Diaby was actually one of the ones that was mentioned. And then, between them, they came to the agreement that he was the one that was going to push forward. So it just feels like all the departments are in place now. I've spoken on this podcast before about the player care department, about the loans department. It's been slightly broken up this year with Mile Edinat moving to Tottenham. But there's good people at the club now. There's very talented people in important positions, and it just feels like everything's growing in the right direction. And all that Villa really have needed, no disrespect to the other coaches that have been at the club, was that elite level coaching to take the club forward. And now they've got that, it feels like everything's in place, and that the only way is up. I mean, we love to get sort of carried away before the season starts, don't we? But if we can't get optimistic about the way that pre-season has unfolded, the way Villa are playing, the players that they've brought in. Yeah, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago on the podcast that FFP is going to be an issue for Villa at some point. But perhaps next year, if they don't get the right sales in, it will be. And, it's something that all clubs need to be looking at. But in general, there's a lot of excitement around the club. And if Villa can continue progressing and perhaps even get into the Champions League, the revenue streams that they're going to increase will just make the FFP issue a little bit less of a concern.
Gonna have to get the Greg Evans FFP klaxon out, but I completely get what you're saying. I know some people don't like you talking about it, but it's a fact. I'm at Sky 2-3 times a week at the moment, and we're talking about Manchester United, FFP, Newcastle, FFP. Villa are fortunate because they sold Grealish for 100
Yeah.
million. I think things would be a lot worse had they not done that. That gives Villa a little bit more room to manoeuvre than perhaps Manchester United and Newcastle have at the moment. But it's a worry for a number of teams. Look at Wolves down the road. I mean, I
Big worry for
seriously
Wolves.
fear. I mean, I don't fear for them because I don't really care what happens to them, but I think they're in massive trouble. They've lost a hell of a lot of players, quality players. They've struggled for a goal scorer for years. I think the manager could walk at any time. In fact, before I've come on, there was murmurs that he may have already walked Lopetegui. I don't know whether that's actually come to fruition yet or whether it will. But they're in serious problems, and it's because of again they can't spend money because of FFP. They've got themselves into
and you
this
think
situation.
about it. This is like this is the point that, you know, without sounding too negative again, this was the point that I was trying to make a few weeks back. Look at Wolves a few years ago, signing some big players on big money, on big contracts, and then, you know, all of a sudden it's all hit home, and the fact that they, you know, dropped down the league ever so slightly and the investment stopped coming, it all catches up on you eventually. So that's why Villa have got to be very mindful of becoming self-sustainable, and with the owners in place, you know, genuine billionaires who are working constantly at trying to increase the revenue at the club. That's why the season ticket prices have gone up. You know, it was the owners that wanted to do that, because every little area of the club needs to be generating more money now. The sponsorship deal on the shirt is doubled the amount. It's why players like Aaron Ramsey will be moved on, because they need to generate funds around that. And it's just the way that businesses and football clubs work now. And there's nothing wrong with that, because Villa are in a good place. They're moving on up. Yeah, okay, there are issues about, you know, whether the season tickets are a little bit more expensive, but I think in general supporters understand to an extent that if they're going to be moving up the table and playing you know, much higher level football, that those rises were always going to come at some point anyway. Perhaps how Villa handled it might have been done differently, but and I think it was always going to be expected at some point. You know more than me on this, Dan, but the tickets have been quite good value for years, haven't they? Right?
Yeah, I would say so compared to the rest of the Premier League. Obviously, Villa have spent some time in the Championship. I think the main problem with the pricing and stuff around the infrastructure at the club and the stadium and whatnot at the moment and the prices, the main problem is communication and how they did things, that they've not made use. It was called the FCG, the Fan Consultation Group. It's called something else now. But I think they've got a few things a little bit wrong with that in what the fans actually wanted in terms of facilities, and they've gone in one direction, which is, I don't think, is the direction a lot of fans wanted to go in. The price hikes, look, it is what it is. I sit here as someone who's part of the problem, because whatever they hoist it up to, I'm not prepared to lose my season ticket, and there'll be many people that feel exactly the same as me. I've sat in that seat my whole life, and I don't want to ever give it up. So you're almost part of the problem, and then the waiting list's so vast now. There's so many people on that waiting list. The club have kind of got most supporters over a barrel, but I still think if you look at the prices, it's not, you know, they're not outrageous compared to some of the rest of the Premier League. And at least at this point now, I feel that there's a trust there with the club that they are heading in the right direction. They've got the right manager, etc. Whereas the year before they put the prices up with Gerrard in charge, it was more in a hope of doing well rather than expectation. Yeah. There's genuine expectation now. And like you say, Villa, from a financial standpoint, they will probably say their hands are tied and they have to do it. So I get it. Look, it's not ideal. Everyone would love to pay what they were paying a few years for tickets, but unfortunately, in general, it's the way football are going. And I understand that if the other clubs charge a certain amount, if Villa want to compete, they're going to have to do the same kind of thing. So it's one of those 50-50 situations where I can see it from both sides. But the club's trending in the right direction, which I think is the main thing. That's what we want. I had a few people ask me on Twitter.
But in Dan, what are your thoughts on the new setup in the Holt End?
Again, I think that's the club taking in a rather basic feedback form from supporters and assuming they want something that they don't want. I think the Villa fans just wanted the facilities improved within the current space in the Holt End. You know, the terrace views that's in the Holt End, that's where I sit. I sit in the Holt End up at the terrace views coming in. I don't think that's what the Villa fans were alluding to when they said they wanted improvements to the facilities. They don't want to be paying for something that's at an extra cost. There'll be people who are more clued up about it than I am. But if I'm not, for example, I'm a season ticket holder. I would like somewhere to go before the game that isn't the concourse, but I'm not doing the terrace view. I just won't do it. I personally think what they're asking for is, when on top of the season ticket prices,
just too much.
It's too much. That's what I think. But there'll be plenty of people who don't think that, who will do it. The proof will be in the pudding ultimately by how many people have taken it up, and I don't have the answers to that. But for me personally, it's not. I wouldn't say it's even been a consideration. Even though, to be fair to me, I go with my dad, who doesn't move as well as he always has done, and I could do with having somewhere that's accessible for him to be able to sit down before the games in comfort, and the terrace view would probably be that. But personally, I think the price point is too much when you're already paying out for a season ticket. That would be my honest feedback on it.
Feels like they're just trying to modernise it, don't they? Isn't it? And they're trying to make it more of an upmarket place to visit in certain areas. I think you have to keep the cost factor in mind, which I'm sure the club have done, in other areas. But I presume their thinking is that it's a small percentage of the ground that's now taken up, but it's opening up, a new opportunity. And I think once the North Stand redevelopment gets done, and the surrounding area, Villa Park is going to be a much more modern place to go and visit, isn't it? And it's somewhere I think that they're trying to get people to, to spend more time after the games. It feels like
it's hard to get away.
There aren't very many places to go after the games that are like, great, are there? And it's difficult to get away. And you just think, if there were really, if there were a new sort of like box park type venue there, that would attract more of a younger crowd. I think keep people there.
Box Park at Wembley is brilliant. I know we don't get there every year, but when we have done it, I've had a brilliant time in Box Park. If they had something like that on a match day, like I say, for me, my circumstances will be different to maybe other people of my age. My priority now is my dad all right? At the football. If I go to an away game, I will go with mates, so my experience is very different. But my home game experience is very regimented. Like this is what I do. I spend time with my dad. I've done it my whole life. That's what I will continue to do as long as he's able to. So what I want is probably different to what other people want. So I get that the club are never gonna please everyone, but I do think they've kind of got this one wrong. If I'm just being honest, I think the club's done so much right over the last few years. Really, I'm really happy with the direction that the club's heading in. But I think my personal opinion is the fans that sit in the Holt End, which is where I've sat my whole life, I think they just wanted improvements to the concourse that was already there, because it's pretty basic. It does take a long time to get served. I think they wanted that modernising. But then what you say is also true of, they've got to try and do different things. But I just think they've not got the balance right on this occasion, unfortunately.
We'll see. I suppose how the next few weeks and months develop. Yeah. Obviously, there were changes in the North Stand, weren't there, with the hospitality, and that sort of
what's happening with the North Stand, Greg?
We've got to find out more details about it. Construction work in the country in general. I'm not an expert, but lots of my friends work in the industry, and projects are just becoming so much more expensive because of the war and Brexit, and various things are driving up the cost of everything. So Villa have changed their plans slightly, but I won't go into too much details until I know for sure exactly what's happening, because I don't want to put out any misleading information without checking everything first. But something we can do on the Athletic in a little bit more depth, me and Jacob between us, and maybe talk about in the podcast in the future weeks.
Just on Jacob. No, we didn't plan to talk about this, but it's just come up, so I might as well ask. Like, how has he found covering Villa so far? Because it must be daunting. You probably come to a place that you've never lived before. To a club to report on a club. He's following in massive shoes as well, isn't he, Greg? It's going to be really difficult to.
No, David Ornstein still staying.
The last ride. To follow on from global Greg Evans. I need to think of a nickname for Jacob. But actually, every ride's different, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed a few of his tactical pieces so far. He did one last week that I really enjoyed. It was such an interesting read about Villa's system.
Yeah. As I said a couple of weeks ago, a very nice writer, somebody who'll get stuck into the tactics side of things, but also the nitty gritty of what's going on at the club. I mean, I probably shouldn't really talk for him too much. We'll get him on the podcast at some
Yeah,
point
yeah, we'll
and
get him on.
and get his thoughts after some of the early games. But yeah, no, he's settling in well. It's always easier, I think, as a reporter. What I'm finding in my slightly newer role covering Liverpool a little bit more heavier than Villa these days. The more games you have, the better it is. The easier it is when you're moving over. You just need a bit of time to get settled in. So I've seen a lot of the comments on The Athletic have been very complimentary towards Jacob's article. So for the guys that are still reading. Please carry that on, because it's always difficult for reporters when they're starting a new role. But it'll be easy. It'll be relatively easy for Jacob because he's an experienced writer now, and there's lots of good times and exciting times ahead at Villa. So it's harder when you come in when they're struggling. Believe me.
Yeah, I'm a bona fide subscriber now since I have to pay for my
Pound a month?
subscription now,
Did
which
you get a pound a month
I
deal?
can't. I think I have got the pound a month to kick it off. To be fair, so it's all right. It's all right for now. I'll continue to read. Look, I genuinely enjoy The Athletic. As I said, I left with no hard feelings whatsoever. I still read it every day and I still listen to stuff on there every day. I find it a really useful resource for working in football media, because you get a sense of what the other teams are thinking as well when I'm doing what I'm doing at the moment. It's great to know what's going on at the other clubs, and I don't think there's anything quite like the Athletic. I don't know why I'm trying to shift it to people. It doesn't really make a difference to me anymore. But yeah, I really enjoy it. Let's talk about something that you may or may not be writing about in the future, Greg. Ollie Watkins' contract. I've had a few people tweet me recently, because I said in May I'd expect this to get signed soon, because that was what I heard, and I expected it was going to get signed soon. Manchester United have since signed a forward, and we spoke, I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, about how sometimes, other transfers might impact the signing of another contract at another club. The striker market feels like it's kind of coming to its conclusion now once we find out what's finally going on with Harry Kane. Although I've got to say, I didn't mention it on Sky, but when we were talking about replacing Harry Kane the other day, I did suddenly think, obviously Watkins is a London boy. Would Spurs maybe try and go for him with 2 years left in his contract? But I sat there quiet because I didn't want to bring it up. But is that contract any nearer to being signed?
I'm not sure if it's any nearer, but it has been very close anyway. For a very long time. Watkins is very happy at Villa. He wants to stay. He's looking forward to the season. He's enjoying himself there. He likes playing under Emery. He believes that Emery's made him a much better player. He's happy at Villa. It's the same sort of scenario as it has been. Bayern Munich showed a little bit of an interest in him previously. They haven't got Harry Kane yet. If Harry Kane does move, then Tottenham are after a striker. There are just all these, small little percentage chances that things can change. The moving part. It's very, very unlikely, I'd say, that Watkins doesn't sign a new deal and he moves. But when these very, very small percentages are still available in football, it's just why things haven't got quite done yet. But look, I expect it to be happening. It wouldn't surprise me if it happened tomorrow, for example. But then it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't surprise me if it happened a week or two down the line, or even further. But I very much expect him to be a part of it. Emery likes him, wants him to stay. Has asked the club to push forward with the deal, and Watkins is happy as well. So I think it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, Greg Evans was very happy writing about Aston Villa, but then he got another opportunity, and he jumped on that. So the moving parts.
Well, I am still writing about. I'm still writing about.
What I mean.
It's a bit harder to play for two clubs, but
yeah, you might having to do so. You're having to do it so far, Greg, and you're doing it very well. I don't know if there's anything else. I did tell you, I did want to ask you. I think Ollie Watkins scored 16 Premier League goals in the end last season, which is a tremendous record, especially considering I think he had one maybe before Emery had joined in the Premier League. I think he might. No, he scored 2 because he scored in Danks' game as well. So 2 Premier League goals before Emery joined, ended on 16. What should he be aiming for this season? Because he's going to be the main man. If he's fit, he's going to play every week, isn't he? So
yeah,
should he be looking at between 20 and 25 goals?
I think in all competitions, yeah. I think it's really difficult to get over 20 goals in the Premier League season. So yeah, look, all competitions, if he can get over 20, absolutely incredible again, because I feel really passionate about Watkins. I really like him, and I just think that his success story has gone slightly under the radar. I think that Villa
I agree.
fans at times are a little bit harsh on him. I think
Yeah, I agree.
the feeling amongst some supporters is that he's not a great finisher, which I just think's a load of bollocks. I think he's a great finisher, and I think he's
I'm glad you
improving.
swore because I think you bang on.
Yeah,
Haaland
I
misses
mean,
chances.
it's just every striker misses chances, but I think he's become a lot more clinical in the last year or so for certain. I know he's been working with individual striker coach as well on various techniques, and that certainly helps. And Emery's done a lot of work with him, so has Rodri, the individual coach at Villa. So the England snubbing I'd look past that because there's just so many good strikers that they've got at their disposal, and look, he's not going to play very often with Harry Kane there anyway. But I just think his success story is we should be talking more about it. We should be enjoying him more. We should be celebrating him more. Maybe I'm ever so slightly biased because I like him as a guy as well. There are players at that club that I enjoy speaking to more than others, shall we say? And Watkins is somebody who I'm not particularly close with him, but just somebody who I speak to after games in a very journalist player relationship, and he sort of talks about his game, and I like the fact he's quite open and honest about it, and his difficulties at times and what he's working on. But if you look through the Premier League, there aren't many strikers that have come from the lower divisions and kicked onto his level. And also, I think he was one of the quickest players to get to 10 or 15 goals over the last sort of 4 or 5 seasons, at least before like Haaland came last year and players like that. But there aren't many better strikers out there in the Premier League. Like, genuinely, there really aren't.
Completely agree. I don't know who people think, the people that get on his back, I don't know who they think that we're going to get. I remember saying this, actually, so I can say this. I remember saying this before we went on this run under Emery. I don't know who people think that Villa can go and get. It's not easy to go and buy a goal scorer. Watkins has now proven across 3 seasons he's guaranteed goals. He'll get you double figures. And I also just think the other things that he offers the team are just like, if you look at Wilson and Watkins, 2 players that have played in the EFL and are now high-level Premier League strikers. I just think what Watkins offers you in the channels in terms of work rate, although, to be fair, Emery's made him play more central. Watkins is a top-class striker in the Premier League. I don't think we can do any better than Ollie Watkins.
Isn't it? So it's difficult to find, another one. It really is hard.
I really like Ivan Toney. I think he is maybe slightly better than Watkins because I think he just does a bit more in the build-up play. Ivan Toney, I think he's a clever footballer, but Ollie Watkins is absolutely superb. And you're right about his finishing; it has improved. Yes, he still misses chances, but like I said, Haaland misses chances. He might score 5 in a game, but he still probably misses 5. He doesn't score every single chance that comes his way, although he does in the odd game here and there. But every striker misses. Watkins is no different.
Both-footed as well. Headers,
decent in the air, fast.
He wins.
Strong.
He scores headed goals.
Play.
He's got different types of finishes. The inside, the outside, the through the laces. He's got it all. I think he really has. I
agree with you.
I think Villa are very lucky to have him, and let's enjoy him. Let's celebrate him. Let's not get on his back and bloody say his finishing isn't good enough, because his goal scoring record shows that it is. I'm getting a bit passionate about this.
Me and you are completely identically on the same page here. Some of the stuff I saw after he missed a penalty the other night, and people were kicking off. One, it's a pre-season friendly. 2, you're not seeing the second half of the season. Do you know what? Watch us for the second half of the season. He was absolutely unplayable at times. I'm very passionate about this subject as well. Ollie Watkins is fine by me. Give him a 5-year contract, brilliant, because I think he'll score Villa goals, and I think he'll get 20 plus this season if he stays fit. I really do. We're going to end the show with some predictions, but before we do that, let's hear from our sponsors, NordVPN.
Then our new show sponsor, NordVPN, might be able to help you out. NordVPN is a secure and private service which works on pretty much any device, including your laptop, mobile, and smart TV. If you want to watch, let's say, some US content, it allows you to appear like you're in that country. And while you're connected, no one can find out what you're doing, including your internet service provider. The service also has threat protection baked in to protect you from intrusive website ads and malware. which is pretty dab handy. A part of NordVPN supporting 1874, the Aston Villa channel, they have given us an exclusive deal of up to 65% off and 4 months for free, which also includes Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. All you have to do is go to www.1874.io/NordVPN and sign up. All the details will also be in the description. And as always, we are truly grateful to anyone that signs up. We know that money is tight. But if you think NordVPN will help you out, it will also help us to keep the channel running.
Get on that deal because it's something I use and it's very, very handy through the season to catch extra games. So yeah, get on that if you've got the means to do so. Let's have some impromptu predictions then, Greg, before we end the podcast. First one, I'll do it as well, and then we'll see who's right at the end of the season. Where are Aston Villa going to finish this season?
I think Villa will finish 6th.
Same. I'm going to be honest. I did my league table the other day on Twitter. I actually do think Villa will finish 5th, but I didn't want to over-egg it too much, so I did put us as 6th, but I actually think we'll finish 5th. But I'll say 6th because I don't want to over-egg it too much. In the cup competitions, Greg, will Aston Villa win a trophy or get to a final?
No.
I'm going to say that Aston Villa Football Club will win the Europa Conference League. That's my prediction. Best manager that they could have to do it. So if they're not winning a trophy under this manager, they'll never win a trophy again. I've said that many times before. Let's have a top goal. I think we'll both agree top goal scorer is probably Watkins. So we'll both pluck a number out the air for him. What are you saying? In all competitions here, Watkins.
Yeah, I think Ollie Watkins. Yeah, it's an easy one. Yeah, Ollie Watkins. Should we have a go on player of the season?
You're going to give me a goal. You're going to give me a goal. I want you to give me a number of goals that Ollie Watkins will score in all competitions. That's what I want you to do.
What did he get this year? 16?
It was 16 in the Prem. Possibly maybe 17 overall. I can't remember if he scored in the Cups or not.
I think he
might have scored
18 goals this season.
In all competitions?
Yeah. I'm
going to go 21 for Ollie Watkins. And now, because we both agreed that he's top goal scorer, let's go for a second top goal scorer and a tally.
Emi Buendia. 8.
You think he'll play every week? I think he'll get some
goals.
My answer would have been Ramsey.
In the Europa League as well, in the Europa Conference League.
Okay, Ramsey would have been my pick, but we don't know how long he's going to be out for at the start of the season. So I will go for Moussa Diaby, let's say 12 in all competitions for him.
These are very speculative, aren't they?
Nothing is. I think these are fine. Player of the year, Greg?
Oh, it's got to be Emi Martinez again, hasn't it?
I mean, you say again, he didn't win it last year, Greg.
He did him last year.
The Greg Evans award is not a real award. It's not a real award.
I had him as my player of the year, so I'm going for him again.
I'm going to go for McGinn. I think after the way he ended the season and Graham Reid come back from him, I think he'll continue. I think he's the first name on the team sheet, actually. Well, actually, Emi Martinez is probably, but I think outfield McGinn's one of the first names on the team sheet. So I'll go for John McGinn. Young player of the year, Greg.
Can you say Philogene? He's 22 now, isn't he? It's not really
under 23 sometimes.
Young player of the year. Someone's got a breakthrough, haven't they? I don't know. It's too early to say. Don't ask me in 6 months, bloody hell.
Well, no, that's not a prediction then, is it? If I ask you in 6 months, you've got something
to
go
on.
Because,
any of these players could get injured.
I know, but it's just predictions. It doesn't really mean anything. You take this very seriously. Take it more seriously than you need to take. I'll go for Philogene as well because there isn't.
I mean,
maybe Kellyman.
Maybe
Kellyman.
Or Duran. Look, if Duran maybe gets some goals.
Or Archer if he sticks around. Yeah, okay. I think that probably does us for predictions. I can't think of any more Villa-based ones to do.
Who do you think will go down very quickly while we're on it?
Sheffield United, Wolves, and Luton.
It's almost a universal feeling, that, isn't it?
A lot of people here have said Fulham at Sky.
They
think Silva might walk as well. And if Mitrovic goes.
We'll see. Well, you've got your 1,500 Sky references in anyway, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it was logical to what I was saying. It fits in with what I was just saying it for the sake of it. It was relevant to the stories that I was telling at the time, Greg. But thank you very much for jibing me at the end of the podcast. I really, really appreciate that. It had been a pleasure to talk to you until the last 30 seconds, Greg. So thank you very much for joining me. Always a pleasure. Thanks to everyone for watching or listening, wherever you are digesting the podcast. If you could subscribe and like and all that jazz that you have to do. I'm not as au fait with that kind of thing as you should be, as I should be. Sorry. So if you could do that, that really helps the channel grow. Dave Reed and myself will be back for a match preview of the Newcastle game specifically over the next couple of days. If you are travelling up to St James's Park on Saturday, have a safe trip and bring back 3 points, please. And in fact, I'll take a point at the moment. You bring back a point.
Yeah.
I'll be happy with that. But yeah, really enjoyable to talk to you, Greg, up the Villa.